She didn't even dress decently for the party, she's a country bumpkin. The words sliced through the air like glass shattering against marble. My breath snagged in my throat. My hand, mid-lift with a champagne flute, trembled so violently. I had to lower it before anyone saw. The ballroom glittered around me. Crystal chandeliers, gilded walls, long tables dressed in ivory linens. 100 polished shoes tapped against the floor, and 100 voices blended into a pleasant hum. And yet, all I could hear was him. My husband. Ethan Bennett. The man I had trusted, defended, loved. He hadn't said it to me. No, he angled his body toward his sister, Melissa, and whispered it like a dirty confession. His lips brushed her ear, his tone sharp, casual, venomous, but I was standing so close I could have touched him. And I heard everything. The sting spread across my chest like wildfire. My skin burned beneath the navy silk dress, the very dress he chose for me. The pearls in my ears felt suddenly heavy, suffocating. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. Melissa laughed. A quick, cruel sound muffled behind her champagne glass. She glanced at me, her gaze sweeping down my body like I was a stain she couldn't scrub out of the fabric of their family. Then she leaned into Ethan, whispered something back, and they both smirked. In that moment, the room felt tilted. I was drowning in silk and laughter, gasping for air. My name is Claire Bennett. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me, because tell me, have you ever stood in a room full of people who swore they loved you, only to realize they had made you the punchline? I wanted to scream. To fling the champagne glass across the room. To demand, why would you say that? After everything? After I've stood by you. But instead, I smiled. A small, frozen, practiced smile, the kind women wear when they've been taught silence is safer than truth. I moved away, weaving between conversations, laughter, the clinking of cutlery. My heels clicked against the marble floor like gunshots. In my ears. My reflection in the mirrored walls was pale, wide-eyed, breaking. The party pulsed on. His family didn't notice me slip toward the edge of the room. They rarely noticed. His mother was at the center, radiant in a sapphire gown, raising her glass for the cameras. Tonight was her anniversary, 40 years married to a decorated colonel. Their lives were framed in golden glory. Photos of vacations in Europe, charity galas, polished Christmas cards, all lined along the wall for guests to admire. And then there was Ethan, shining, tall, perfect. The golden sun. The man they all orbited like planets around the sun. I had once believed I was part of that orbit. Now I knew I was only an asteroid, unwelcome, unpolished, drifting too close to their world. The champagne in my hand went warm. I set it down on a tray passing by, my fingers shaking. My heart pounded in my ears, begging me to run. But where? Out of this room? Out of this marriage. The microphone squealed suddenly, and I flinched. His brother, Daniel, tapped it with a grin. Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention? The crowd hushed. Glasses were lifted. Faces turned toward the stage. Daniel's grin widened. Tonight we gather for 2 reasons. To honor our incredible mother and father on their anniversary, he gestured toward the couple, who beamed beneath the spotlight. And to celebrate my brother Ethan, who has just been promoted to senior vice president at Cole and Andrews. Applause thundered through the hall. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering. His mother dabbed tears with a silk handkerchief. Pride etched in every line of her face, and Ethan, my husband, stood tall, glowing, his arm raised in mock humility as if he hadn't known this announcement was coming. His eyes swept the room, drinking in their admiration. He belonged to them, body and soul. I should have clapped. I should have smiled. Instead, I felt my nails digging crescents into my palms, because while they toasted him, I remembered the words. Still ringing in my ears, country bumpkin. The applause roared. The champagne glasses clinked. And then, the doors at the back of the ballroom opened. At first, I thought it was just another guest, late to the celebration. But no. The man who entered wasn't smiling. He wasn't dressed for champagne and laughter. He was dressed for war. A dark suit. A leather briefcase. A face like carved stone. He walked with measured steps across the floor. Guests shifted uncomfortably, whispers rising. By the time he reached Ethan, the applause had thinned into silence. The man didn't bother with pleasantries. He pulled a folder from his case, flipped it open, and in a voice as sharp as the crack of a whip, he said, "Sorry to interrupt. Mr. Ethan Bennett, you've just been served." The words landed like a grenade. The room stilled. Utterly stilled. Chairs scraped. Forks froze midair. A collective gasp sucked the air from the ballroom. Ethan's face went pale. He reached for the papers with trembling hands, his mouth opening, then shutting, then opening again like a fish pulled from water. His promotion toast evaporated into smoke. The applause became murmurs. And every eye turned on him, not with admiration, but with suspicion. My heart pounded. My breath caught in my throat. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt powerful. I didn't know yet what was in that folder. Divorce papers? A lawsuit? A debt he had hidden? But I knew this, whatever storm was breaking over his head, it was deserved, and standing there, I made a promise to myself. I would no longer carry the weight of humiliation. That burden belonged to him now, and I would make sure it crushed him. The papers shook in Ethan's hands, his fingers fumbling across the crisp edges as though they burned. His smile, so polished, so rehearsed, vanished. The golden glow around him collapsed into something hollow. The room leaned in. Every polished shoe, every jeweled wrist, every pearl-draped neck pivoted toward him. The mighty Bennett family, so used to raising glasses in his honor, now hung in suspended silence. What is this? Ethan's voice cracked, hoarse. The man in the suit didn't flinch. A subpoena. Fraud investigation. You're expected in court Monday morning. The words fell heavy, detonating in the hush of the ballroom. Melissa gasped. His mother pressed a hand to her chest, her diamonds trembling. His father's face turned the color of ash, and Ethan, my husband, looked as though someone had ripped the floor from under him. I should have been shocked. I should have staggered back, horrified. But instead, a strange calm spread through me, as if the universe had finally tilted in my favor. The whispers began, rippling across the room. Fraud. Court. Did you hear that? His promotion toast was ashes now, trampled beneath the weight of scandal. I stood perfectly still. The only steady figure in the storm. Ethan's eyes darted to me, wild, desperate, searching for a lifeline. And for the first time in years, I didn't give him one. I tilted my head, just slightly, and let him drown. After the man left, silence clung to the air like smoke after a fire. Ethan tried to recover, his voice breaking as he stammered, there. Must be some mistake. I'll handle it. But no one was listening anymore. His mother clutched Daniel's arm. Melissa whispered furiously to her husband. Guests excused themselves, eyes averted, as though his shame might be contagious. I slipped out the side door. The hallway beyond was dimmer, quieter. My heels echoed down the polished floor as I walked faster, chest heaving. My reflection in the gilt-framed mirrors startled me, eyes wide, lips parted, glowing with something I hadn't felt in years. Not fear. Not shame. Power. For so long, Ethan had made me feel small. His family had treated me like an afterthought, a charity case, a woman who should be grateful for scraps of attention. But now? Now he was the spectacle. The joke. The broken man in the spotlight. I stepped into the restroom, locked the door, and pressed my palms to the sink. My pulse thundered. My lips curled upward, not in joy, but in something sharper, revenge. I remembered the early years. When I first met Ethan, he was charming, attentive, magnetic. He took me to rooftop bars. Told me I was different from every woman he'd known. He painted me a future full of light and stability, but marriage peeled away the shine. The man who once held my face in his hands with tenderness now critiqued the way I chewed my food. The man who once bragged about my laughter now told me to lower my voice at dinner parties. The man who once said I was perfect now whispered to his sister that I looked like a country bumpkin. And I stayed. I stayed because love makes fools of us. Because I thought I could earn his respect if I just tried harder, dressed better, bent smaller. But tonight the curtain had ripped away. The truth was this: Ethan wasn't a man worth saving, and if the universe was generous enough to hand me the opening blow, then I would take it and strike harder. I left the restroom, composed, lips painted with calm. The party had dissolved into chaos. The cake was untouched, the champagne glasses abandoned, the band standing awkwardly as guests made excuses to leave. Ethan stood in the corner, phone pressed to his ear, his face pale and sweaty. He didn't notice me at first, but when he did, he rushed toward me, eyes frantic. Claire, listen to me. This is nothing. A misunderstanding. I need you to back me up, okay? If anyone asks, I cut him off with a whisper sharper than steel. Don't. His jaw clenched. Don't what? Don't think I'll lie for you. Not this time. His eyes widened, fury flickering behind the panic. What the hell are you talking about? You're my wife. You're supposed to be on my side. I leaned closer, my lips almost brushing his ear. Your side died the moment you called me a bumpkin. He pulled back, blinking, searching my face as if he couldn't comprehend this version of me, and that terrified him more than the subpoena in his hands. The ride home was silent. He gripped the wheel so hard his knuckles blanched, the papers tossed on the back seat like a ticking bomb, the city lights streamed past the windows. I stared out, my reflection faint against the glass. For years, I'd wondered what freedom would look like. Tonight, I saw the first glimmer of it. When we pulled into the driveway, Ethan finally spoke, his voice low, sharp. You don't understand, Claire. They're trying to ruin me. Someone set me up. I need you to trust me. I turned to face him. His eyes were wild, pleading, the mask of arrogance cracked open. I used to trust you, I said softly. And You killed it. He opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. Only silence. That night, as he locked himself in his office, muttering into phone calls, I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling. The house felt different now. No longer a gilded cage. More like a stage, where the final act of our marriage would play out. I knew this was just the beginning. The subpoena was a spark. But I was the storm, and I would burn everything he loved until there was nothing left. But ashes. The morning sun cut through the blinds in thin, merciless stripes. I woke not from sleep but from the absence of it. My eyes were heavy, but my mind burned like a furnace. Ethan's office door was still closed. It had been all night. I'd heard muffled voices through the walls, phone calls, arguments, whispered curses. He hadn't come to bed, hadn't even tried to pretend. When I finally padded down the hallway, barefoot, I found him slumped at his desk. His tie hung loose, his shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot from the night's war. The subpoena sat open in front of him. The papers were spread across the desk like crime scene photos. I leaned against the doorway. Didn't sleep? He jerked upright, startled, then scowled when he saw me. This isn't funny, Claire. You don't understand what's happening. Then explain. My voice was calm, too calm. It scared even me. He rubbed his face, groaning. It's nothing. A corporate audit. Some jealous prick at the firm. Trying to drag me down. I stepped into the room, my eyes scanning the documents. Lines of text blurred together, allegations, numbers, dates. And then I saw it, embezzlement. $2.4 million siphoned through offshore accounts. My breath hitched. You stole money? His head snapped up. I didn't steal. It's complicated. No, I said, voice sharp, slicing through his excuses. It looks pretty simple. He slammed his hand against the desk. The papers fluttered like startled birds. Damn it, Claire. You think you know everything? You don't know what it takes to survive in that firm. They eat men alive. Everyone. Does it? Not everyone gets served in front of their mother's anniversary cake. His jaw clenched. Rage and shame twisted his features into something unfamiliar, something ugly, and in that moment, I realized, I didn't love him anymore. He spent the rest of the day on the phone, pacing the house, barking orders to lawyers. I stayed silent, watching. I made coffee, I folded laundry, I played the role of the quiet wife. But inside, a plan was building, brick by careful brick, because here's the thing about betrayal. Once the illusion shatters, your eyes see everything they once ignored, the bills arriving in crisp envelopes, marked urgent. The bank account that had thinned faster than excuses could explain. The expensive watches, the endless dinners, the sudden business trips. Pieces fell into place. He hadn't just stolen from his firm. He'd stolen from me. From our future. From every dream he once dangled before me like a prize, and now, his empire was cracking. I just had to widen the fault line. That evening, his mother called. Her voice, brittle and cold, echoed from the speaker. Ethan, what have you done? I told you, Mother, it's a mistake. A setup. Do you know what people are saying? Do you know what you've done to this family's reputation? He groaned, massaging his temples. I'll fix it. Just give me time. Her silence stretched long, heavy. Then, you'd better. And the line went dead. He stared at the phone like it had betrayed him too. When he noticed me in the doorway, his expression hardened. Not a word to anyone, Claire. Do you understand? I stepped closer, my arms folded. Funny. You didn't care who was listening when you called me a bumpkin. His face flushed. Don't start. But I already had. That night, I slipped into his office after he finally passed out on the couch. The smell of whiskey clung to the air. His laptop sat open, screen glowing faintly. My fingers hovered over the trackpad. For years, he had locked me out of his world, his passwords, his finances. But the arrogance of drunk men is a gift. He hadn't logged out, and there it was, emails, statements, transactions. Proof of every stolen dollar, but something else caught. My IDATA name. Repeated, threaded through transfers and messages, Rebecca Caldwell. The pit of my stomach dropped. The emails weren't just financial. They were intimate. Late-night messages, flights booked to meetings that led to hotel rooms. Another woman. Of course. I should have been devastated. Instead, I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that filled the empty room. Because betrayal, layered on betrayal, doesn't wound anymore. It fortifies, and suddenly, I wasn't just his wife. I was his executioner. The next morning, I made him breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee. I placed the plate in front of him like nothing had changed. He looked at me warily, suspicious of the softness. What's this? Breakfast, I said simply. You'll need your strength. For what? For the war you're about to lose. He frowned, but I smiled, gentle, patient, because I knew something he didn't. I had every piece of evidence I needed. I had his fraudulent accounts. I had his mistress's name. And I had my silence, which was more dangerous than any word I could have spoken. For years, he had reduced me to a shadow. Now I would step into the light, and he would crumble. That evening, I emailed the first file. To an anonymous tip line, just one. Just enough to fan the flames already licking at his career. Then I sat back and waited, the quiet storm behind the walls of our house, and for the first time in years, I felt free. The fallout came faster than even I imagined. By Monday morning, the whispers had turned into headlines. Ethan's face, once plastered across his company's website under Rising Leadership, was now stamped on news articles with words like fraud, embezzlement, and corruption. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee warm between my hands, scrolling through the glowing screen of my phone. His name trended on Twitter. Colleagues posted carefully crafted statements, distancing themselves. A local news anchor, lips pressed in mock sympathy, called him a respected executive now facing serious allegations. Upstairs, I heard the crash of glass. A curse shouted into the walls. Ethan's morning had begun. He stormed down the stairs. Shirt half-buttoned, tie hanging loose. His hair was a mess, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "Claire," he barked. "Did you see this shit? They're running with it like it's fact." I looked up slowly, calm. "Maybe because it is." His nostrils flared. "You think this is funny? They're trying to destroy me." "No," I said softly, setting the mug down. "You destroyed yourself." He stared at me, stunned into silence. For once, the golden sun had no words. At noon, his firm called. I listened from the other room, his voice rising in desperation. "Please, just let me explain." "Yes, I understand the optics, but this isn't. No, don't suspend me. I can fix this." A long pause. Then the slam of the phone against the wall. "They suspended me," he muttered, sinking into the couch, face buried in his hands. "Until the investigation's over." I almost pitied him in that moment. Almost, but pity is a luxury for the innocent. And Ethan was anything but. The calls kept coming. His mother, frantic. His father, furious. Melissa, shrill with panic. "You need to do damage control," his sister hissed through the speaker. "Hire a PR firm. Get ahead of this before it ruins us all." Ruins us all. The Bennetts weren't worried about Ethan's soul, or his marriage, or the truth. They were worried about their name. Their legacy. Their pristine reputation, now bleeding in public view. I sat quietly in the corner, invisible as always, sipping tea while the family scrambled like rats on a sinking ship, but inside, I smiled. Because I knew something they didn't. This was only the beginning. That night, Ethan begged. He found me in the kitchen, his voice softer, desperate. "Claire, please. I know I've been hard on you. I know I've said things I shouldn't. But I need you now. You're my wife. Stand with me." I turned slowly, meeting his eyes. "Stand with you? You mean lie for you?" His lips parted. But I didn't give him the chance. "Do you remember what you said at your mother's party? That I didn't even dress decently? That I was a country bumpkin?" His face tightened. "That was a joke." "No. It was the truth. Your truth." My voice cracked like a whip. "You never saw me as your partner. Just an accessory to polish when it suited you. Well, here's my truth, Ethan, I'm done covering for you." His expression hardened. "You'll regret that." "No," I said, stepping closer, my voice low, dangerous. "You will." 2 days later, the mistress appeared. Rebecca Caldwell. Blonde, polished, 32. A marketing executive at another firm. She wasn't content staying in the shadows. Not when Ethan's name was already dirty. She went to the press. Photos of them together. Hotel receipts. Messages that dripped with intimacy. The story shifted from corporate fraud to a double scandal, theft and infidelity. The Bennetts went silent. Ethan went ballistic. "Rebecca's lying. She's bitter, she wants money, she has receipts," I interrupted, scrolling through the articles. "So do I." He froze, eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" I held his gaze, steady. "Check your laptop." When he stormed into his office and realized files were missing, transferred, copied, his roar shook the walls. "You went through my computer?" "I went through my husband's computer," I said evenly. "The one I bought him. The one in my house. Try harder, Ethan." He advanced on me, fists clenched, veins bulging at his temples. For a second, I thought he might hit me, but he didn't. He stopped just short, trembling with rage, his breath hot against my face. "You're destroying me," he hissed. "No," I whispered back, calm, steady. "You destroyed yourself. I'm just making sure everyone sees it." The call stopped. After that, his family no longer rang, no longer begged, no longer offered advice. They had cut him off, washed their hands of the scandal, and I moved quietly, deliberately, piece by piece, every email, every bank transfer, every thread between him and Rebecca. I packaged them neatly, sent them to the right people. Investigators. Journalists. Lawyers. The dominoes fell one by one. Suspension became termination. Termination became legal action. Legal action became headlines screaming across every feed. Corporate vice president accused of $2.4 million embezzlement and affair. The man who once strutted through boardrooms, who looked down on me in crowded ballrooms, was now reduced to whispers of shame at every street corner, and I wasn't done yet. One evening, as he sat hunched on the couch, eyes glazed over, I stood in the doorway and watched. He didn't notice me. He was staring at nothing, broken, unraveling, and instead of pity, I felt clarity. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was justice, because Ethan had stolen more than money. He had stolen my voice, my dignity, my years. Now I was taking it all back, and the final act hadn't even begun. The house grew quieter with each passing day. Not with peace, but with defeat. Ethan no longer stormed through rooms, barking orders or making calls. He moved like a shadow now, unshaven, slouched. His once expensive suits discarded for wrinkled t-shirts. His phone buzzed endlessly at first, but eventually the call slowed, then stopped altogether. The empire he built was crumbling, and all he could do was watch it burn, and I was the match. On the third morning, I found him in the kitchen, hunched over the counter. A bottle of whiskey sat beside him, half empty, though the clock read barely 9. Breakfast of champions, I said, sliding past him to make coffee. His head snapped up, eyes red, jaw tight. You think you're clever, don't you? I stirred sugar into the cup, calm. No. Just patient. He slammed his fist onto the counter. The bottle rattled. You're enjoying this? Watching me fall apart? I turned, meeting his eyes. Enjoying it? No. But watching you finally face consequences? That feels like justice. His chest heaved. For a second, I thought he might break down, cry, beg. But instead, he straightened, and I saw a flicker of the old Ethan, the one who believed he could bend the world to his will. You won't survive without me, he spat. You think you're strong, Claire? You're nothing without my name, my money, my family. I took a slow sip of coffee, the warmth steadying me. Funny. That's exactly what I thought about you. Later that day, I got the letter. It wasn't mine, it was his. Delivered in a thick envelope stamped confidential. I recognized the seal instantly, Cole and Andrew's legal division. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I already knew what was inside. Termination. And notice of pending charges. When I left it on his desk, I lingered for a moment, watching the man I once married. His hands shook as he opened it, eyes darting across the page. His face drained of color, mouth tightening into a hard, thin line. Then he tore the letter into shreds, pieces floated to the ground like snow. That evening, he tried to shift the war. I was sitting in the living room when he appeared in the doorway, calmer now, dangerous in his quiet. We need to talk, he said. I didn't look up from my book. About what? About us. I raised an eyebrow. There is no us, Ethan. Just you unraveling. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Don't do this. Don't walk away now. You think anyone else will want you? After this mess? After they see who you really are? You'll be dragged down with me. I closed the book, set it aside, and stood. Dragged down? No. I've been rising, Ethan. The only one sinking is you. His eyes hardened. You're making a mistake. No, I whispered, leaning close enough for him to feel the venom in my words. I'm correcting one. But Ethan wasn't a man who lost gracefully. That night, I heard him rifling through my drawers. The scrape of wood, the rustle of papers. I crept down the hall, heart pounding, and caught him in my study. He froze, caught mid-search. My bank statements lay scattered across the desk. What are you doing? I demanded. He straightened slowly, sneer curling his lips. Making sure you're not plotting against me. My laugh was sharp, hollow. Oh, Ethan. You should know by now, I don't need to plot. You destroy yourself just fine. His face twisted, fury bubbling over. You think you're untouchable? I'll ruin you, Claire. If I go down, I'll drag you with me. I stepped forward, steady, fearless. Try. For a moment, we stood inches apart, the air electric with hatred. Then he shoved past me, storming into the night. The slam of the front door echoed through the house, a gunshot in the silence. Hours passed. He didn't return. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening for the sound of his car. My chest was tight, my mind racing. Not with fear, never again with fear. But with calculation, because if Ethan wanted a war, then I would give him one. And I wouldn't just win. I would erase him. The next morning, he stumbled back in, reeking of alcohol and cheap perfume. His shirt was untucked, his eyes glazed. Rebecca. Of course, really? I said, blocking the doorway to the kitchen. You think she'll save you? She's the one who sold you out. He sneered. At least she doesn't nag me. I smiled, slow, sharp. No. She just hands reporters your text messages. The flicker of realization in his eyes told me he hadn't known. Not until now. She's using you, Ethan. Just like you used me. And when you're empty, she'll toss you aside. His chest heaved. His fists clenched. But he said nothing because he knew I was right. By the end of the week, Ethan was jobless, disgraced, and drowning in debt. His car sat unused in the driveway, payments overdue. His so-called friends vanished. His family stopped returning calls. He was alone, except for me, the wife he had humiliated, dismissed, underestimated, the wife who now held every piece of his crumbling empire in her hands. And as I stood in the doorway, watching him sit slumped on the couch, face buried in his palms, I realized something. I didn't just want to watch him fall. I wanted to decide how he landed, and I already knew the exact moment I'd strike. His trial. Public. Unforgiving. The place where his mask would finally shatter, and when the judge called his name, I would be there, not as his wife, but as the woman who ended him. The courthouse loomed like a stone fortress against the morning sky. Its columns cast long shadows across the steps, swallowing the people climbing them, lawyers, reporters, spectators, each hungry for blood. And in the middle of it all, Ethan. He walked stiffly, chin high, flanked by his attorney, but the mask had cracks. The swagger was gone. His hair unkempt, his suit wrinkled, sweat collecting at his temples. Reporters shouted his name, microphones shoved forward, cameras flashing like lightning. Mr. Cole, do you have any comments on the charges? Is it true your mistress leaked company documents? Do you regret your actions toward your wife? That one made him flinch. Just slightly. But enough for me to notice. I stood at the top of the steps, a silent sentinel in a black dress. Not mourning, power. Our eyes met across the chaos. He hesitated. For the first time, I saw not the man who had humiliated me, not the husband who mocked me behind my back. I saw prey. Cornered, and I didn't look away. Inside, the courtroom smelled of polished wood and paper. The air buzzed with tension, every seat filled. I sat behind the prosecutor's table. Close enough for Ethan to feel my presence every time. He glanced over his shoulder. When the judge entered, the room rose, then settled again. The trial began. The charges were laid out like knives on a table: fraud, embezzlement, misuse of corporate funds, insider trading. Ethan's lawyer tried to paint him as misunderstood, as a man under pressure, a victim of circumstance. But then came the evidence: emails, contracts, transactions traced back to his personal accounts. Each document was a nail in the coffin. And then, the witnesses. The first to take the stand was Rebecca. She walked in wearing a pale blazer, her hair pulled into a sleek bun. She looked polished, rehearsed. But her eyes flickered nervously when they landed on Ethan. State your name, the prosecutor instructed. Rebecca Mills. And your relationship to the defendant? Her throat bobbed. I worked with him. Worked. Past tense. The prosecutor slid a stack of printed messages onto the table. Ms. Mills, are these texts between you and Mr. Cole? Rebecca's face flushed. Yes. Could you read the highlighted lines aloud? Her voice trembled as she recited Ethan's words: promises of promotion, shares of profit, even, hidden between business talk, intimate phrases meant only for her. The courtroom shifted. Gasps, whispers. Ethan's jaw tightened, fists clenching. On the table. I sat still, serene, because the world was finally hearing the truth. Next came the investors he had deceived, their voices sharp with betrayal. Men in tailored suits, women with clipped tones, all pointing at Ethan, recounting his lies. Each testimony was a stone thrown, cracking his carefully built facade. And through it all, he glanced back at me. As if I held the power to stop it. As if I still belonged to him. But I didn't flinch. By the second day, the courtroom was suffocating with tension. Reporters filled every bench, sketch artists capturing every grimace, every whisper. That morning, the prosecutor approached me. Mrs. Cole, she said softly, would you be willing to testify? My breath caught. The question wasn't unexpected, but the weight of it settled like steel in my chest. Would I take the stand? Would I speak, in front of him, in front of everyone, about the man he truly was? I looked past her to Ethan. His posture stiff, his lawyer whispering frantically in his ear. Yes, I said. My voice didn't shake. I'll testify. The moment came on the third day. My heels clicked against the floor as I walked to the witness stand. The oath was read, my hand pressed to the Bible, my voice steady. I do. And then I sat. Facing the courtroom. Facing him. State your name, the prosecutor began. Claire Cole. And your relationship to the defendant? My eyes locked on Ethan's. I am his wife. The room buzzed at the word am. Not was. Am. Present tense. But my tone stripped the word of any affection. It was not a vow. It was a chain I was breaking. In public, Mrs. Cole, the prosecutor continued, can you tell us, in your own words, about the defendant's behavior outside of his business dealings? I drew in a breath. Ethan Cole, I said slowly, is a man who thrives on appearances. He presents himself as a devoted husband, a brilliant businessman, a loyal son. But behind closed doors, he is cruel. Dismissive. He belittles, manipulates, and controls. He thinks of people, his colleagues, his partners, his wife, not as human beings, but as tools. And when those tools stop serving him, he discards them. Gasps rippled through the room. The judge tapped his gavel for silence. I didn't falter. At his mother's anniversary party, I continued, he humiliated me publicly. Called me a country bumpkin. Said I was unworthy of standing beside him. But what he didn't know was that the very same night, his mistress was handing reporters evidence of his crimes. While he mocked me, his empire was already burning. Ethan shifted in his seat, face red, teeth grinding. The prosecutor nodded. And what is your position on the charges against him? I leaned forward, my voice sharp as glass. Every accusation is true. And the man sitting there, I pointed directly at Ethan, deserves every consequence. The room erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashed, whispers surged like waves. The judge slammed the gavel again. Order. Order in the court. But order was gone. The image of Ethan Cole, the untouchable businessman, was shattered, and I had swung the hammer. When I stepped down, Ethan's eyes burned into me. Hatred, betrayal, desperation, all tangled in one dot. But beneath it all, there was fear. For the first time, he knew I had the power, not him. Not anymore. That night, as I left the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mrs. Cole, do you plan to file for divorce? Do you believe your husband will be convicted? Do you feel vindicated? I paused on the steps, the cool night air washing over me, the cameras flashing like stars. Vindicated. I thought of the years I spent in his shadow, silenced, diminished. I thought of the nights I cried in secret, the mornings I put on a brave face, and now, here I was, standing in the light. Yes, I said simply. I do. The crowd erupted, and behind me, inside that courthouse, Ethan Cole sat cornered, his empire in ashes, his name in ruins, and the trial wasn't even over yet. The courtroom was heavier now. Not just with people, but with tension, with inevitability. The prosecution had finished their case. The jury sat stone-faced, their expressions unreadable, but I knew. I could see it in their stillness. Ethan was already guilty in their eyes, yet he refused to see it. On the fourth morning, when he was allowed to address the court, Ethan rose slowly from his seat. His lawyer gave a subtle shake of the head, but Ethan ignored it. His arrogance was the only suit he still wore. He straightened his tie, cleared his throat, and looked directly at the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice smooth but brittle at the edges, you've been fed a story. A carefully crafted story meant to destroy me. But stories aren't truth. He glanced at me. His lips curled. My wife, Claire, wants you to see me as a monster. But she doesn't tell you how she benefited from every dollar I made, how she lived in luxury while I built everything. She doesn't tell you how she smiled at galas, wore diamonds I bought, traveled on planes I paid for. No, she prefers to play the victim now that it's convenient. The room murmured. The judge raised a hand for silence. Ethan pressed forward. Yes, mistakes were made. But fraud? Embezzlement? No. This is the cost of ambition. This is the price of success. And now they want to punish me for daring to rise higher than the rest. His voice grew louder, more frantic. I am not guilty. I am not broken. And I will not be erased by lies, jealousy, and betrayal. He slammed his hand on the table. The sound cracked like a gunshot. The judge's gavel pounded. Mr. Cole, restrain yourself. But it was too late. The jury wasn't swayed. His outburst sealed the impression of a desperate, unhinged man clinging to a collapsing facade. I watched from my seat, calm as stone. Because this was the Ethan I always knew. Not the charming businessman. Not the dutiful son. But the arrogant, self-absorbed tyrant who couldn't imagine a world where he wasn't worshipped, and the world was watching him fall. That night, he tried one last time to regain control. I found him waiting in the parking lot, leaning against my car, his face pale, eyes bloodshot. You shouldn't be here, I said, my voice even. He stepped forward, blocking my path. Claire, listen to me. We can fix this. I laughed, bitter. Fix this? Ethan, you're a headline, a cautionary tale. You're already finished. He grabbed my arm, gripped tight, desperate. No. No, listen. If you stand with me, if you retract what you said, they'll go easy. We can spin this. We can rebuild. I looked at his hand on me, then back into his hollow eyes. Stand with you. My voice was ice. The only thing I'll stand for is watching you lose everything. He searched my face, panic creeping into his features. You loved me once. No, I corrected, pulling free. I loved who I thought you were. But you killed that man long ago. His breath hitched. His shoulders slumped. For the first time, he looked truly small, and then, with a whisper edged in venom, he muttered, "If I go down, I'll take you with me." I didn't flinch. I stepped close enough for him to see the fire in my eyes. "You already tried," I whispered. "And you lost." The sentencing day arrived, the courtroom was packed beyond capacity, cameras lining the back wall, every news station broadcasting live. The judge read the charges again, each word heavy with finality. The jury returned. One by one, the foreman answered, "Guilty. Guilty. Guilty. Guilty." Each verdict struck like thunder. Ethan sat frozen, his jaw tight, his knuckles white. The judge's voice carried across the silent room. "Ethan Cole, you are hereby sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 7. Restitution in the amount of $4.5 million will be required. Court is adjourned." The gavel fell, the sound of chains followed. Two officers moved toward Ethan, cuffs glinting under the lights. His lawyer murmured something, but Ethan didn't respond. His eyes were locked on me, hate, fury, regret, and beneath it all, the quiet realization that I had won. Outside, the air was electric. Reporters swarmed, questions flew, microphones thrust toward me. "Mrs. Cole, how do you feel about the verdict? Do you have any statement for the public? What's next for you now that your husband has been convicted?" I paused at the top of the courthouse steps, the cameras flashing like 1,000 stars. For years, I'd been invisible, reduced to silence and shadows. Now, I stood where the world could see me. I lifted my chin, my voice steady. "The man you saw in there today is not the man I married. But he is the man he always was beneath the mask. Justice has been served. And now, it's time to rebuild, not for him, but for me." The crowd erupted, reporters shouting, cameras clicking. But I didn't stop. I walked down those steps slowly, deliberately, each stride a declaration. I am free. That night, when the house was finally quiet, I sat in the kitchen with a glass of wine. The silence was different now. Not suffocating. Not heavy, peaceful. I looked around at the life he had tried to control, the walls he once filled with his voice. And I realized they were mine now, not trophies. Not cages. But spaces I would reclaim. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for him to come home, and he never would again. Still, one thing remained. The last piece of the revenge I had been carefully crafting, because destroying Ethan's empire wasn't enough. He had taken my dignity, my trust, my years, and I intended to take something back, not just freedom, power, and tomorrow, I would begin. The house was different without him, not quieter, the silence had always been there, but lighter. The walls no longer pressed in, no longer carried the echo of his footsteps or his dismissive voice. For the first time in years, the air felt breathable. But freedom was not enough. Ethan was in prison now, yes, his empire shattered, his reputation burned. Yet I knew him. I knew his kind. He would cling to any ember of power, any shred of dignity, and feed it until it grew again. So I decided, this story would not end with his imprisonment. It would end with me ensuring he had nothing left to rebuild. From not wealth, not family, not even the illusion of control. This would not be survival. This would be reclamation. 2 weeks after sentencing, I walked into Cole Manor, the sprawling estate his family had lorded over for generations. The gates opened slowly, the gravel drive crunching under my heels. I had always been an outsider here, tolerated, not embraced. His mother's anniversary party was proof of that, when Ethan mocked me publicly while his family smiled politely and said nothing. But now, I walked these grounds not as the humiliated wife. I walked them as the legal owner. When Ethan's assets were frozen, his properties came under review. And with the restitution owed, many of them were to be liquidated. But I knew which strings to pull, which calls to make, and so, with a quiet stroke of a pen, Cole Manor, his family's pride, was transferred to me, not to sell, not to keep as a memory, but to strip it clean room by room. I emptied it. The oil paintings, the crystal chandeliers, the antique furniture passed down through generations. Each piece appraised, each piece sold. Reporters ate it up. Headlines screamed, "Disgraced Ethan Cole's family estate liquidated by wife." From powerhouse to empty halls, the fall of Ethan Cole. I made sure every sale was public. Every heirloom, every reminder of his legacy, gone. When his mother called, her voice sharp with fury, I listened calmly. "You have no right," she hissed. "I have every right," I answered softly. "Your son made sure of that. You're destroying us." "No," I corrected. "He destroyed you. I'm just finishing the job." She hung up. I didn't care. The Coles had enabled him, shielded him, celebrated him. They turned a blind eye to his cruelty, and in doing so, they made me a stranger. In their home now, I was the ghost haunting it, but stripping him of wealth wasn't enough. Ethan thrived on control. Even behind bars, he would try to pull strings, call in favors, manipulate from the shadows. He had contacts, loyalists, people who still owed him. So I cut the cords. Through my attorney, I pushed for full divorce proceedings, swift and merciless. Every asset traced, every account drained. His frozen bank accounts became mine through legal settlement. The cars were repossessed, the properties foreclosed, and then came the charity accounts, the ones he used for appearances, pretending generosity. While funneling money back to himself. I redirected them. Not to him, but to real causes. Women's shelters. Scholarships. Rehabilitation programs. Every dollar he once used to polish his image now went to heal lives he would have sneered at. The press adored it. The public, once blind to his cruelty, now saw me as the woman who stood against him and redirected his corruption into good. And Ethan? He saw it in the papers delivered to the prison each morning. His name no longer meant power. It meant ruin. Then came the letters. At first, one. Then several. All from him. They arrived in neat envelopes, scrawled in his handwriting. Please. Rants. Threats. You think you've won, but I'll be out. I'll rebuild. You owe me. Everything you have is because of me. Claire, stop this madness. Remember who we were. I didn't reply. Not once. Silence was the sharpest blade, but I read them. Every word. Because each letter showed me something precious. He was unraveling, without wealth, without family, without me to belittle and control. Ethan Cole was crumbling inside those concrete walls, and that was the sweetest revenge of all. Still, I knew. The world. Memories fade. People forget. Empires rebuild from ashes if left alone. So I ensured Ethan would be remembered, not as he wanted, but as he truly was. I wrote, page after page, I poured the truth of my marriage onto paper. The lies, the cruelty, the nights of silence after his mockery, the years of shrinking myself to fit his shadow. And then, the fall. The mistress, the betrayal, the trial. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't even a memoir. It was a reclamation, and when it was published, beneath the mask, My Life with Ethan Cole, it tore through the public like wildfire. Not scandal. Not pity, but resonance. Women reached out by the thousands. Letters, emails, messages. Your story is mine. Thank you for speaking. I thought I was alone. I was no longer invisible. I was not just Ethan Cole's wife. I was Claire, and for the first time, my voice filled the world louder than his ever did. Months passed. Seasons shifted. The headlines moved on to newer scandals, fresher stories. But Ethan remained inside, fading from relevance. Sometimes, when I drove past the prison gates, I imagined him there. Pacing his cell, clutching his letters, seething as he read about the life I was building outside. I imagined him watching the news on a grainy television, seeing my face, hearing my name, realizing the world admired the woman he tried to break. That was justice, that was freedom. On the 1-year anniversary of his sentencing, I stood once again at the gates of Cole Manor, only it was no longer Cole Manor. The estate had been stripped, sold, gutted. And now, a new sign stood at the entrance, the Claire Foundation. A rehabilitation center for women leaving abusive marriages. A sanctuary for those finding their voice again. The irony wasn't lost on me. The house where I was humiliated was now the house where others would heal. His legacy, erased. My legacy, born. As I walked the halls that once echoed with his family's pride, I heard new sounds, laughter, footsteps, conversations of women rediscovering themselves, and I smiled, because this was the final act of revenge, not his ruin. But my rebirth. Sometimes, at night, I still hear his words in memory. She didn't even dress decently for the party, she's a country bumpkin. The insult that sparked the fire, and I laugh. Not in bitterness, but in triumph, because that moment, the one meant to shame me, was the moment I began writing the end of his story, and the beginning of mine. The last letter came 3 weeks later. The handwriting was shakier this time, the words scrawled with less venom, more desperation. Claire, I have nothing left. You've taken everything. Please. Visit me. Talk to me. I need you. I folded it neatly, slipped it into a drawer, and left it unanswered, because my silence was louder than anything I could ever say. On a spring morning, I stood at the foundation's ribbon-cutting ceremony. Cameras flashed, applause echoed, speeches were given. I cut the ribbon, and the doors opened to women who would walk a path I once thought I'd never escape. Reporters asked how it felt, and I answered simply, it feels like the end of one story and the beginning of another. They applauded, but deep inside, I knew the truth. It wasn't just the beginning of another story. It was the conclusion of the story of Ethan Cole, businessman, manipulator, fraud, was not written by his hand. It was written by mine, and it ended here. When I walked away from the cameras, from the applause, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. A closure, not because he was gone, not because I had won, but Because I had chosen the final word, and the final word was mine.